welcomed more than anyone around the world the announcement of the ceasefire agreement. But Palestinians are still being killed and maimed, with aid restricted and reconstruction delayed. Palestinians want all of this to end. And they don't want to lose half of Gaza in the process. The ceasefire must be upheld and respected in full. Nothing can justify that 1,000 Palestinians have been killed or injured since the onset of the ceasefire. Nothing can justify that since the start of the ceasefire, every single day, 2 Palestinian children are killed by Israel. And while recognizing that situation is, of course, not comparable to what it was before the ceasefire, it is essential to remember that the loss of a child for a family is earth-shattering, especially when you thought that they had survived the war and they could now be safe. We should never forget we are talking of the survivors of a genocide that are still having to escape death and suffering every single day while being prevented from rebuilding any part of their life. Nothing justifies that families are confronted with the harsh winter in tents drenched in water, that their basic needs and rights are not upheld, that the health and education systems that have been destroyed are yet to be rebuilt. Nothing justifies that communities continue to be forcibly displaced. At every juncture, the U.S. administration has to intervene, often at the highest level, to prevent the ceasefire agreement from collapsing altogether. The mediators, the U.S., Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, whose efforts are highly appreciated, instead of being able to focus on the day after, have every day to deal with the one crisis after another. It is a deliberate attempt to prevent us all from moving forward towards life, towards liberty, towards peace. And yet, our people in Gaza show the world every day how determined they are to restore life in Gaza. Even before they could have a home to keep them warm and safe, the first thought of our people in Gaza was to get their children to resume their education, despite the impossible circumstances. In this connection, we salute UNRWA for having about 100,000 kids receiving education by the end of this month. They are trying to restore in the midst of ruins and in the most inhumane circumstances some form of normalcy. Mr. President, Palestine together with the region and the world welcomed the Trump plan as a means to end the war. It did so fully aware of Israelis' intentions. Israel seeks the collapse of the ceasefire as it continues to pursue the 3 things that President Trump's plan denied it: forced displacement, occupation, annexation. It is trying to achieve this aim by stalling the entry of humanitarian aid, by resuming its attacks, and most importantly, by trying to entrench the yellow line or even to advance beyond it. Everywhere in the region, the same policy: land grab disguised under security pretext. In Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, Israel knows security would be best achieved by just and lasting peace, but continues to fuel perpetual war. Everywhere it is undermining the efforts to cease fire and achieve peace. It is in this context that the Security Council adopted Resolution 2803, which owed a lot more to this complicated reality and to the efforts to consolidate the ceasefire and to move to phase 2 than to the realization of the rights of the Palestinian people or the achievement of peace at this juncture. And yet, the resolution simply referring to Palestinian self-determination and statehood drove the Israeli government crazy. Netanyahu felt compelled to come out publicly to say no Palestinian state under any circumstances, followed by a renewed call by the Israeli Prime Minister for the displacement of our people from Gaza. Gaza is Palestinian, and in fact, this is an understatement. Gaza is the bleeding heart of Palestine, like Jerusalem is its beating heart. There is no Palestine without Gaza. And the future of Gaza will be determined by Palestinians, and it is one in which there will be no occupation, no blockade, no annexation, no food, no forced displacement. Our right to self-determination is enshrined in the UN Charter, and before that, our right to freedom is enshrined in natural law. Nothing can alter this right, and our people will not renounce it. And Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are one Palestinian territory confronted with the same policies, even though at different scales. Mr. President, it is imperative that the attacks against the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, by occupation forces and Israeli settlers are brought to an end, and with them the policy of displacement and replacement of our people by uprooting communities and colonizing the land. In this regard, we hope that the very important and strong condemnations that we have heard in recent days will translate into actions that will ensure our people will no longer be subjected to such horrific attacks. Israel must also bring an end to its policy aimed at undermining politically, financially, and militarily the Palestinian Authority to thwart the prospect of independent statehood. It must stop its attacks and release the withheld tax revenues. Mr. President, this Council has often spoken of the fate and treatment of Israeli hostages now finally free. There is no explanation why it should not show more attention to the plight of Palestinian prisoners who are arrested by the thousands, often detained without any explanation or justification, and subject to the worst forms of abuse. When a video leaked of the rape by Israeli jailers of a Palestinian prisoners, the scandal in Israel was about the leak, not the rape. Some openly considered the rapists as heroes and praised them for their despicable act. There are many testimonies of sexual abuse against men, women, and children. Behind bars, doctors and humanitarians are treated as animals. 100 Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli custody in the last 2 years, either killed or left to die through medical neglect and starvation in very harsh conditions. Where else would such numbers, such facts, such horrors be met with so little attention and almost disregard? I will state once again what I have often repeated in these halls. In addition to the loss, the pain our people feel comes from the humiliation of being openly described and treated as human animals, as expendable, as if they were not children of the same God, humans endowed by their Creator with rights. The first step towards peace and coexistence is Palestinian freedom and recognition of our existence. Every life matters, and we must stand